You guys know I love podcasting and listening to podcasts, and I'm guessing if you're listening to this that you love podcasts too. Have you ever considered podcasting yourself? It is a great way to reach your audience, grow your know, like and trust factor, and not need to show your face unless you want to. If it is something you've thought about but you don't know where to start, then head over to becomeapodcaster.uk/BAP quiz, BAP quiz, to access a 2-minute quiz that will help you work out what type of podcast might suit you. That's becomeapodcaster.uk/BAP quiz. You're listening to the Mindset and Action podcast, bringing you the map to grow and streamline your business in 2023. I'm your host, Donna Eade, your go-to gal for all things podcasting, planning and productivity. And I'll be bringing you all that plus mindset goodness from experts with knowledge to share. Let's make 2023 the year of success in your business. The more I want to get something done, the less I call it work. Richard Bach. Welcome back to the podcast, everybody. I am so glad to have you here today because we are talking about one of my favourite topics. I mentioned it a couple of episodes ago. We are talking about batching today, and you may have seen from the title that we're actually talking about batching and baking. Baking is a new one that I heard recently, and I thought I've got to come on and share this with you guys. So we have been speaking the last few weeks about context switching and prioritizing our work versus our life. And this kind of fits in here as well because we are looking in all of these aspects about using our time wisely, saving time, and making sure that we are prioritizing our time in a way that helps us to reach our goals. So the concept of batching and baking is that by doing batching or baking or both, you're going to increase your productivity and save yourself some valuable time. So this goes back to the context switching thing. We are really reducing the context switching when we batch and bake. So managing multiple tasks in today's fast-paced work environment, whether you work in an office or whether you work at home for yourself, it is just crazy the amount of things that we put on our plates that we have to do. And it is a distraction at best. You know, it's just you've got to do one thing, but you've got in your head that you need to do something else, and you're being pulled in 100 different directions all at once. And I have to say that for me, this is something that I have tried my best to avoid in my work life since I went self-employed. I have tried to not fall into the trap of letting my days run away with me by not having a focus and just doing whatever needs doing at that particular time. Have I got it right? No, I haven't. I have failed at this so many times. So please don't think that if you don't get this right first time, it's not working for you, because I tell you what, when it does work, oh my gosh, it's a beautiful thing, guys. I introduced the concept of calendar blocking into my diary very shortly after I went self-employed. And that to me was my first step into the realm of kind of batching my content. I would have blocks on my calendar that would show me, on this day, I'm going to focus on this between these 2 hours. I'm going to focus on that between those 3 hours. I'm going to concentrate on that after lunch, etc., etc. And I would break down my days like that. I would typically only have 2 or 3 things in that calendar block, but I was finding that that wasn't necessarily working brilliantly for me, that sometimes I wouldn't have something in that block to do. So by putting it down as a 3-hour block, I was then just like, well, I then just either didn't utilize that time very well, or I just got busy. Well, I just didn't use the time very well. I would use it as busy time, or I would think, oh, I'll just catch up with this YouTube video, and I'd fall down a scroll hole and you wouldn't see me until tea time. So I found that that was not working as well as it could for me. So I knew that I needed to change the titles of those blocks and use it in a slightly different way. So batching has been something that I have done from the beginning, and I have always found that to be really useful when I've done it. As at this moment in time, I am 3-4 episodes into a batch that I am doing for my podcast. So I do have some time in my calendar where I can move things around a little bit, change the number of the podcast, and slip some others in there if I have something that is more timely. But I do like to batch my episodes so that I can get all the like for like parts of it done at once. So today I'm doing recording. I'm only going to be doing recording. If I get all my recording done, I may edit the episode that's due to go up this week, but I've got time in my diary to do that tomorrow, so it's not something that is urgent for me. However, if I do get these episodes done in time, I have the time then to go and start the editing process. But just by doing this, recording every episode, all I'm doing is recording and saving the episode, opening the next notes and starting again, so that I am doing very little context switching. I'm just going from Google Docs, which I've already got them all open at once, so there is not going in and opening it up and closing it down and opening it up. They're all open, so I'm just changing the tab and then opening a new Audacity window for the new episode. I'm not even closing Audacity and reopening it. I've currently got 3 tabs of Audacity open. So that is how I'm doing my batching, and it really saves me time, because if I was to do the podcast how I have done in the past, it's really not my favorite way of doing it at all, is that I will record the episode, edit the episode, upload the episode. And I've changed recently how my podcast gets uploaded and what it looks like when it's uploaded. So that has been streamlined a little bit. However, my usual plan of action was I open a Google Doc, I copy the Google Doc so that I keep my main episode look like I've got a template. Basically, I copy the template and I create the new podcast episode notes. I will then write the notes for the episode. Then I open Audacity, I record it, I save it. I will then go in and edit it. Then I will export it. Then I upload it to Buzzsprout. Then I take my notes and I take some of that and I write show notes in Buzzsprout. Then I open up my website and I take the HTML code for the episode and I paste that into a box. And then I take the notes and I share those over onto my website, copy and paste it onto my website. Then I create graphics and then I upload those to my website. Then I save that and I schedule it on Buzzsprout. I create a voice snippet from Buzzsprout. And then I've got to go and do my email. And then I've got to do the graphics. And then. And you can hear how many times I've context switched within that. And I'm probably switching more than that, because during those different elements, I might go and check my emails. I might have my lunch. I might go and see what's happening on Facebook, so there is context switching within that. It's just not so streamlined. So I have done it before where I have not done anything but an episode, and it has taken me 3 hours from start to finish getting an episode done. But because of the context switching aspect of it, it will often take me all day to get that one episode done. Well, today I have got on the roster, on the challenge, is to get 6 episodes recorded. Now, if I can get 6 episodes recorded in one day, and it's not a full day either because I had my exercise this morning, so that takes off a couple of hours off my morning, I am then ahead of the game for the next 6 weeks. And I am going to take tomorrow to edit. So I'm hopefully going to be able to edit multiple episodes. Now, editing can sometimes take a little bit longer than recording, depending on how I have done. So this is new because I've got a new format of the way I record my episodes, in the hope that it takes me less time to actually edit the episodes. So we will see how well that has gone when it comes to editing my podcast and how quickly I can get that done. And then I am just dropping the show notes into Buzzsprout and I'm not having to copy it over to my website because Matthew's done something funky on my website for me. And I absolutely love the way my podcast looks on the website. So if you haven't checked that out yet, do head over to donnaeade.com/podcast and you'll be able to see it there. I really like it. So that is what I am doing. And that is why I like batching, because you can because you're not context switching, because you're staying with the same thing, you can just get more done in the same amount of time. So that is what I love about it. So as you can hear from what I've just talked about, the art of batching is taking like for like items of work and putting them together and doing them all at once. So this works really well for your weekly content, whether that is video, blogs, or podcasts. You could do your blogs, write 3 or 4 blogs in a day, create that batch of, when I say similar tasks, it has to be something that you're going to do in the same app. So maybe there is something that you do in Docs, maybe you do your invoices in Docs and you write your blogs in Docs. So you could actually batch those together so that there is a day of the week where you do your invoicing and you do your blog writing, because it's all done within Google Docs. But I would say try and batch the one thing rather than similar tasks, the one thing. Like, so for me, it's my podcast. I batch my podcast because it saves me so much time to do it as a batch, to record it all together, to then edit it all together, to then uploading and doing the show notes all together. It just saves time from doing it as individual episodes. So if you've got something like that, that is a fantastic thing to batch. You might choose to do your invoicing in batches because that is all the same thing, and you get into the routine of you click this button, you click that button, you click this button, you add that text, you click this, you add that, and it's the same for every one. You just need to know the amounts and stuff, so it becomes more of a doing it by rote rather than having to really think about, okay, now I need to go over here and now I need to go over there. You get into a rhythm of it. And that is what batching does for you. It will save you so much time in doing that. Email responses is something that you could batch, doing your social media scheduling. And of course, like I said, the content creation is really primed for batching. So I would suggest creating dedicated time within your diary for batching. So for me, if I'm sort of testing it today because I'm doing slightly different way of recording my podcasts and I'm going to be doing a different way of editing it. I'm not sure what is practical to put down as a goal. So I've got these episodes ready to go. I've done the outlines for them yesterday. So I managed to get 6 or 7 done yesterday. So I know that in one day I can do 7 podcast scripts. I am now recording them and I can see how many I'm going to get done in the hours that I have available today. And I'll be able to say, okay, so I can batch record this many episodes, and I'll be able to see how I can fit that into my diary. So if I can record 6, then I only need to do a batch every sort of 5 weeks to make sure I'm a little bit ahead so that I've got a week to spare sort of thing. So I'll be able to see when I need to put it in my calendar that I record my podcast. And you can do the same with yours. You can create that dedicated batching time. You can set good goals, especially if you start like I'm experimenting this week to see how quickly I can get my podcasts done through this method. I'll then be able to set goals of when I want to have them up, when I want to make sure they're edited, when they're up on the Buzzsprout and everything else. So it will help you. One thing that you will need to do when you're batching is to make sure you're eliminating all other distractions. So when you are doing your content, when you are doing your batch, whatever it is, make sure that all your other tabs windows, etc. are closed, and you only have open what it is you need to get this batch done. So for me, with my podcast, I've got Audacity open, I've got Google Docs open. Everything else is closed. I don't have any other tabs open. I haven't got any other windows open on my computer. So I'm not getting pings from different apps. I'm not getting like a Facebook Messenger ping or anything like that coming through. I am able to just focus on what it is that I am doing when it comes to recording these episodes for you. So make sure that you also switch your phone off, put it on silent, put it on focus mode, whatever it is for this batch. You can set a timer if you like. So for example, I've got an appointment that I need to go to in a little bit. I could set an appointment alarm on my phone to go off in time for me to be able to get to that appointment, so that I know when to stop, so that I don't have to focus on the time, because I think that can be a distraction as well. If you've got something that you know you need to do, you could be time watching that, or you don't time watch and you don't set an alarm and you forget it and then you miss something. So if you have got something that's going to interrupt your batch, then make sure that you set an alarm on your phone so that you do have that go off, so that you can be where you need to be. But other than that, have your phone in focus mode. Don't let other notifications come through on it. Make sure that you've got other windows shut down so that you can focus on getting that batch done. So the next thing that I wanted to talk about is this new concept that's obviously not new, but new to me, of baking. I hadn't heard this before, and they go so well together. You know, you bake a batch of bread rolls, you know? So I was just like, oh, this makes so much sense. This is fantastic. So baking is a method of consistently allocating time for important tasks or projects. So rather than saying, I'm going to do all of my podcasts now in this batch, I might say Monday afternoons is for podcasting, and I do my podcast work on a Monday afternoon. And that is baked into my diary. So it doesn't matter what else is going on, I am podcasting on a Monday afternoon. And that is able to create a sense of urgency. It reduces your procrastination and it ensures consistent progress because you're working on it every week. So if there is something that would work for you in that respect, that you have got something that you are doing, maybe it's client work. Maybe your client work, you have it baked into your diary that you work on your client work on Tuesday afternoons and Thursday afternoons. And that gives you that sense of like, okay, I need to be prepared for that. It's coming up. It creates that urgency of making sure that you schedule things, because if you don't do this, then it's just like, oh, I'll get to it when I get to it. So by baking it into your diary, you're actually setting those expectations for yourself, which I think is really important. And you can actually bake your batch. So for me, I am batching my podcast episodes. I can look at it and say, okay, so I can get 6 episodes done in a day. Fantastic, which means that I need to record every 5 weeks, which means that I'm going to go ahead in my diary and I am going to bake time every 6 weeks to record 6 episodes. And that means that whatever day that is blocked out. I have done that. It is baked into my diary. It cannot be changed. I'm doing my podcast on those days. And you can do it like that, or you can do it for shorter tasks. So you could bake in your social media time, for example. Okay, so it is important for me to check my socials because I need to be in my DMs. That's how I get clients. So I need time for that. So I'm going to bake in 30 minutes after lunch and 30 minutes at the end of the day to go into all my different social medias and check my DMs. Maybe it's that. So you could see baking as another form of calendar blocking in a way. It is separating out time in your diary to do specific things. Now, with calendar blocking, I am very much somebody who blocks out the whole day. So every hour is accounted for. With baking, I think you can be a bit more flexible. It's more about taking certain projects and important tasks and baking them into your diary, and then you do the other work around it. Whereas I would literally block out like the morning for YouTube scripting, the afternoon for podcast recording. I would do client work on a Thursday. I would do one-to-ones on a Friday, and that would be my calendar. And that's when I would do that work. And then I would do the other work around it. So, for example, the admin side of things, looking at my email, that would all come as part of my day to day, but I would have a focus for the day. Whereas baking to me is more taking specific time blocks and saying, okay, this work needs to get done at this point, and just having those things in the diary for the length of time that you would do them, rather than just blocking out the whole morning for something that might just take you a couple of hours, and then the rest of the time you're just doing work. So that, I think, is a really cool way to look at your diary, look at scheduling things in, and creating more time and consistency within your day. So I'm hoping that from that you can see how powerful batching and baking, especially used together, can be to get you ahead of the game and get you being as productive as possible. I think it's actually a fantastic way to run your work day, especially when you work for yourself and you're setting your own deadlines, you're setting your own targets. It can be really good to have those baked in times to do things, because it creates a deadline for you. Okay, so I need to make sure that I've got my podcast outlines done because I'm going to be recording them on this day, and just setting those kind of deadlines for yourself so it helps you to move forward. There are some drawbacks, as with anything, and you need to have contingencies in place for this. So, for example, you might get interruptions, people coming, knocking on your door. You might have people just drop by. I don't know if you have this, but I have heard of friends who family and friends think because they work from home that they are there to have a cup of tea with at any point during the day, and will just drop by unannounced for a cup of tea. So there are things that can come up and will interrupt these times that you've allotted for your batches and bakes. So you need a bit of flexibility to be able to change your priorities and focus differently. And this is where batching and baking rather than calendar blocking comes in, because as you heard me say, when I calendar blocked, I blocked out all of my time. Now, I did do something which I'm going to touch on in a second that helped me with the issue. However, if you block out all of your time on your calendar for these things, then when you get an interruption, you can't do anything about that, because you haven't got time in your diary to then make up for that interruption. If you're batching and baking though, and not calendar blocking every hour, you have some flexibility there. You can move your admin around. You don't have to focus on doing certain things at certain times. But the other thing that I always do is I have a baked in 4 hours in my diary, and that is Friday afternoons. Friday afternoons are my time off. Well, I hope it's my time off. However, if I get behind with something, if there is a deadline coming up that I need to hit, that Friday afternoon time is the time where I can pick up the slack, go back to something that I got interrupted with, or move something from another point in the week so that I can continue. So, for example, if I was podcast recording in the morning, but I had a writing task to do in the afternoon, but I got interrupted in the morning, I could take that writing and put that to the Friday afternoon so that I can continue to do the recording at that time. So there is something to be said for having some flexibility, having some white space in your diary so that you can jiggle and move things around if needed, because we can't foresee everything that's going to happen. There might be an emergency that you're needed for. There might be somebody who decides to drop on your door unannounced. There might be a phone call you need to take. There are all sorts of things that come up to interrupt us during our time, even if we are being so secure on making sure that we're eliminating the distractions. You can't always get all of them. So having that flexibility in your diary is really important. So to recap what we have spoken about today, we've looked at the advantages of batching and baking your work as a great time management technique to improve your productivity. I want you to try and incorporate batching and baking into your daily routine. And I would love to have your feedback on it because, like I said, I am trying out a slightly different way of doing my batching for my podcast. I will obviously let you guys know how that goes, but I would love to hear the things that you're batching and baking and how that works for you versus what you're currently doing. So if you would, I would love to hear your feedback over on Instagram, Donna_Eid_. Slip in my DMs, tell me what it is that you're up to. I would love to hear your stories. And yeah, I would love to do a follow-up to this episode. So if you are interested in sharing your experience, I would love to have you come and share it on the podcast. So get into my DMs, let me know how it goes for you. Let me know if you already batch and bake and how that works for you. And I will look to see if I can slot in an episode in the next quarter about how batching and baking is working for you guys. So let me know over on Instagram. Okay, guys, that is it for today's episode. I would love it if you would leave me some stars where you listen. Head over to Apple Podcasts if you can and leave me a review. It makes such a big difference to the podcast and I really, really appreciate it. Don't forget, become part of the Pod Squad over at donnaeid.com/Pod Squad, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye for now. Don't forget to hit those stars and leave a review of the podcast where you listen if you found value in what you heard today. It's a free way you can help the podcast reach more people just like you.